Hello everyone, today we'll be making a dice rolling device built-in dice storage along with built-in miniature storage. So let's get into it. Okay, for this build we require cardboard, dollar store glue sticks, canvas, some popsicle sticks, paints, specifically acrylic, and lastly some dollar store foam board. So let's get into it. Now, before we start, we need to roll to see how well this build is gonna go. Let's see what we get here. Unfortunately, it was a 1, so let's see if the project reflects the roll, shall we? Now, we're gonna start off with the canvas board. Now, you may be wondering, we're not painting a picture or anything. No, I don't use the canvas board for its intended purpose. I actually, as you can see that I'm doing, am ripping off the actual canvas and am trying to get to the board underneath. It is a sturdy, hardy material I found. I've used them to build dungeon tiles, dungeon terrain, and now a dice tower. Next up, I printed out a mock-up of the shape of my dice tower and am just simply cutting it out. This is a great way to ensure that you get straight lines because I am terrible at making sure everything is uniform and equal. Next, we're just gonna put that template right on top of the foam board, get a Sharpie. You don't have to be specific with it. I just slathered the Sharpie on there, and then once I took the template away, I had a nice shape right there. I used an X-Acto knife and my pocket knife to pry this board apart. It actually took a lot longer than I thought it would. Next up, I kind of just saw that the edges were a little bit jagged, so I used some, I believe it was 80 grit sandpaper, sanded the edges until they were fairly smooth. I didn't need them super smooth because I was going to cover them up later with popsicle sticks and foam and cardboard anyway. So don't worry about getting it too perfect. Paint and glue can hide a lot of mistakes, as you'll see. Next up, we are going to start on building the actual structure. I elected to go with cardboard to build the walls because I didn't want to deal with any more of that foam board. I just cut about an inch, glued it right onto the foam board, and then cut it to size. I did this for all 5 sides. It was fairly simple. I did have to go back over the edges of some of them to make sure that they were straight, but other than that, it was perfect. Next up, I cut a couple squares and have started to build the box for my dice tower. I put a bar at the top of the dice tower so that when I roll everything, it will go down, hit the bottom of the dice tower, and then roll out of the little ramp that I am gluing in right now. It was a lot of trial and error to see what would work and what wouldn't. You'll see me put the dice in over and over again to make sure that it's actually rolling. Next up, I am cutting the top of the dice tower. This will be where I put the dice in. I want to make sure it's the proper size to fit the slightly larger D20s and the regular D20s you can get from the dollar store. I want all my dice to be able to be rolled in this thing. I have found, however, that D6s don't roll as well in dice towers for some reason. Next up, I have put the front of the dice tower on, just cut a jagged square because we'll cover that up later. And now I have gotten another strip of that 1-inch cardboard and made some little dice storage at the side. I'm going to do this on the other side as well. Same thing, just cut 1 inch tall and then put it on the side. So I have some dice storage and a dice tower already built in. Next up, I grabbed some of that foam board, ripped the paper that was on the side of the foam board, and glued it right on. I did not worry about cutting it to size beforehand because I used some scissors and an X-Acto knife to make sure it was the right size after I had cut it. So I did this for all of the outside of the entire structure as well as the inside. You see me trying to cut it there. I glued it, cut it again, made sure it was the right size, messed up on some pieces. You can see my scrap pile ever growing. I elected at the end to just use an X-Acto knife to start cutting because I found that it was a lot more precise, a lot easier, and saved me a lot of time. I also put foam board all over this structure. It was a bit of a pain, but now you can see we have a fully foam covered structure. Next up, I grabbed some tinfoil, crumpled it up, and this is a great method I found of making this foam look like stone. So once it is painted gray painted with some highlights, it will look great. It will look like a stone wall, a castle vibe is what I'm going for with this. I went all over that thing with the tinfoil, got a smaller piece of tinfoil, was going in the cracks and crevices. You don't need a lot, don't overdo it, otherwise your stone will look like it's been utterly destroyed. I didn't want to do that, I just wanted to add texture. Next up, I grabbed those popsicle sticks and was laying them down, cutting them to size, messing up, cutting some more. Once again, the scrap pile is growing, but I went for this interesting design, mostly due to the shape of the dice tower that I had to go with. So I have the triangle in the center, and then on the outside I have those other popsicle sticks. I had to cut the angles. They weren't exactly flush, but it worked for my purposes. Next up, I have put popsicle sticks on the side of this dice apparatus. The purpose for this is to hold the dice a little bit above where the actual bottom of it is going to be. So you see me there, I'm cutting popsicle sticks, I'm measuring, I'm putting them on the sides, gluing. Sometimes I had to take a few off, cut them again. It's really just a trial and error process. To be honest, I didn't really have a plan going into this project. My plan was I want to make a cool dice tower that has storage as well as the shape. That's all I knew. So I've kind of just gone into this head first and started with all of this. You can see me there cutting again, measuring again, making sure that everything's right. It doesn't have to look exactly good because I found once you put paint on everything, you kind of don't look at everything else. Again, I'm putting popsicle sticks on all of the sides of this dice rolling device, and I kind of just put these popsicle sticks wherever there was a seam, wherever you could see the gap of foam. That's where I put the popsicle sticks, and you'll see with painting later that kind of comes into the color scheme. After doing all of that, which was the longest part of the process, was popsicle sticks, can you believe it? I sealed the little top of the dice rolling device, put some cardstock paper up there just to give it a nice finish so you didn't see all the cardboard and foam. I did the same thing with the bottom of the apparatus. I put some cardstock on the bottom, cut it to size similar that I did with the foam, and had a nice bottom so I didn't have to worry about how ugly it looked if one of my fellow players decided to look at it for some weird reason. Next up, I used Mod Podge. I just like to use this to seal everything in, and it makes a good base for painting. I slathered it on there and just went to town. You can do this when things are unpainted. However, if you have a painted surface and you put a bunch of Mod Podge on there, I have found that it can sometimes diminish the paint and leave translucent areas, so be careful with that. But for this, I kind of just put it all over, waited for it to dry, and then I was ready to paint. I actually began painting not with the gray of the stone or the brown of the wood beams that I wanted to make. I began painting with black. So I found that with certain acrylic paints, it's hard to reach in the crevices, so I like to do a base coat. This base coat I decided to do black because it would be a good background for the stone and make the colors pop. I also painted the inside of the dice tower black, so when looking in you wouldn't see a mess of cardboard and foam. I covered this entire thing with black paint. It actually took longer than you'd think because of all the crevices and cracks. You can see me there with a finer brush going between those wood boards. And once finished with that, I painted all of the stone. You can see there the black really made the stone pop, made it look like some sort of cobbled stone. I'm kind of just going in with the paintbrush willy-nilly, not really worrying about covering everything, because those popsicle sticks I will make brown. So you can see me here, I've mixed some brown paint, and now I'm just making those popsicle sticks all brown. I did have to be more careful than I was when painting the stone, so I had to make sure not to cover up any of my previous work. However, it did happen, and that's when I went back and did some touch-ups. Now, I found some nice light brown paint that I mixed and decided to put some highlights on this wood. And because I just wanted it to pop more, I didn't like just a plain brown. It didn't look good enough. So you see me here, I used this paint, went all over it. I kind of, when I started, I put a bunch on, and then I kind of just put a streak of brown paint on, and then rubbed it in with my finger. I found that it gave it a nice finish. It made it look old, it made it look rustic. I thought it gave it a very nice finish and made it look all spick and span and ready for Mod Podge, the last step. I tried to slather it on less than I did before. I made sure to thin it out, and with that, the entire project was done. I just left it out to dry. So I am very happy with this project. As you can see, it fits plenty of my dice. It fits 2 sets of dice, along with a bunch of d6s at the bottom. It can fit some of my larger dice that I have, as well as some of the standard regular size ones. I also found that I could put miniatures on top of the dice tower, which made me very happy for my bard character that I've been playing in a campaign right now. I also found that I can put the dice at the bottom of it and still roll, so if you really have a lot of dice, you can put dice in the sides and lining the bottom. I am so happy with how this project turned out. If any of you have any ideas for my next build, please let me know. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.